And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. One man, one microphone, one mission, one message. True News, the only newscast reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And now for the most powerful hour on radio, here is End Time Newsman, Rick Wiles.
This is True News, 1 hour of uncensored news, views, and commentary. Welcome to the program. I'm Rick Wiles. Today is Thursday, January 15, 2015. Trends Journal publisher Gerald Celente will join me in approximately 12 minutes. I've predicted for 4 or 5 years that 2015 will be the year that the wheels start coming off the bus of the global financial system. I expect all the wheels to fly off over the next 2 to 3 years. I believe the regime that's attempting to rule the world will utterly wreck the global financial system between 2015 and 2017-18. One wheel definitely became wobbly today. The Swiss National Bank shocked the financial world with its unexpected decision to eliminate its cap on the value of the Swiss franc currency versus the euro. The decision sent a tsunami of shockwaves around the world as investors and corporations scrambled to decipher the meaning of the decision, evaluate its short-term and long-term consequences, and to stem their financial losses. The Swiss franc soared in strength against the falling euro, and shares in Swiss companies plummeted as the realization spread that Swiss exports such as watches will suffer greatly. Investors, currency traders, and fund managers were totally unprepared today for the announcement. One trader described today's market turmoil as complete carnage, as the Swiss franc appreciated 30% against the euro today. The surprise decision was prompted by the soaring strength of the U.S. dollar, the declining value of the euro, and the expectation that the European Central Bank will soon announce a colossal quantitative easing money printing scheme to print euros to fight off deflation on the European continent. Apparently, the Swiss National Bank governors decided that Switzerland had to decouple from the minimum exchange rate for the Swiss franc against the euro because the EU currency is depreciating quickly against the U.S. dollar. European financial analysts commonly agree today that the Swiss National Bank action guarantees that the European Central Bank will agree to quantitative easing at its January 22nd meeting. Chris Beauchamp, a market analyst for IG, told Swiss Radio, quote, "It's not every day that a central bank pulls the rug out from underneath something in such a massive way, and clearly people are worried that there's something bigger afoot. This kind of event is the kind of thing that will trigger volatility. This is not a one-day thing now," end of quote. Renegade economist Martin Armstrong told his blog readers today that the Swiss are bailing out of the peg because the European Central Bank will more likely than not begin buying sovereign bond debt of its member states. He said, "We are recommending to clients to offload everything you possibly can to the European Central Bank and say thank you very much." He said that his computer model is warning that this is the culmination of the bond bubble and that it is the ECB, the European Central Bank, that is buying the top. Now, Swiss gold manager Egon von Greyers told Eric King of King World News that today's announcement was the fulfillment of a prediction he made on December 1st, 2014. He said the Swiss National Bank was probably aware of a massive QE program to be announced next week, and that's why they pulled the trigger now, because They wanted to cut their losses at about 100 billion Swiss francs. The next story may not on the surface sound like it's connected to the economy, but my guess is that it is definitely linked to the economic turmoil gripping the world. A CIA double agent identified as Marcus R. stole a list of the real names, aliases, and locations of 3,500 German intelligence agents around the world. The arrest of the double agent last summer caused a major rift between the United States and Germany when it was revealed that the spy was a double agent for the CIA. It was reported that Marcus R. offered to sell the list of German spies to the Russians. In addition to working for the CIA, Marcus R. was on the payroll of Germany's BND spy agency, where he had access to top-secret documents. The stolen list of BND spies contains the real identities and aliases of German spies posted worldwide in German embassies as diplomats. So how is it connected to the financial system meltdown? Well, the U.S. dollar is in a fight for survival. The people that control the United States of America are determined that the U.S. dollar will remain top dog in the world. But right now, the fight is on. It is every man for himself, dog eat dog, a fight to the death for all combatants. Financial analyst Jim Willey has reported for a number of years that his sources in Europe tell him that Germany is secretly preparing to exit the euro and launch a new currency, possibly a Nordic euro. He also has been told that Germany is secretly working out an alliance with Russia to end the dominance of the U.S. dollar. In other words, Germany and Russia would become allies. So just ask Saddam Hussein and Colonel Gaddafi what happens to you when you start playing around with the idea of a new currency. Both men reportedly were floating the idea of a gold and oil-backed Middle Eastern dinar, and both men woke up dead. Hey, if you are between the age of 8 and 14 and live in Great Britain, spy agency MI5 is looking for you. Britain's domestic intelligence agency has launched Project Petra in conjunction with BBC's children's show Blue Peter. Project Petra is scouting for children to become spies in Great Britain. The most promising would-be spies will be taken to MI5's headquarters in London. Again, this is going to be a television reality show, kind of, game contestant show, like America's Idol, The top 8 kids will attend a spy school and will be made into intelligence officers in service to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. So just think about it. Children as young as 8 will be trained as spies. This is the face of the New World Order. Well, how is socialism working out in Venezuela? The socialist state was forced to impose strict rationing in the state-subsidized stores as citizens become more restless over rising prices, extreme shortages, and growing unemployment. State security forces are deployed outside most stores in Venezuela as citizens stand in line for hours for milk, bread, and flour. Police officers are demanding proof of identification for all shoppers to make sure that no immigrants are buying food. Ah, yes, the joys of socialism. And now America has a socialist government. So this is what we have to look forward to in the years to come under the Obama economic recovery. Well, the world was shocked several weeks ago by the atrocities committed in Paris against innocent people by devout Muslims following the Quran. They weren't extremists who hijacked a peaceful religion. No, they are mainstream Muslims obeying the teachings of Muhammad in the Quran. But while the news media and the world leaders focus their attention on the Paris bloodshed, few people are aware of the massacre of Nigerian Christians. Boko Haram destroyed nearly 4,000 houses in 2 Nigerian towns recently. Satellite images reveal the scale of the devastation on the towns seized by the Muslims who were evangelizing Nigeria with the sword. The towns were literally wiped off the map. 20,000 people fled the fires and the swords. Hundreds were killed, but nobody knows the true number of dead citizens. One survivor said nobody stayed behind to count the corpses. Another survivor said those fleeing stepped on human bodies for 3 miles as they fled through the bushland. Younger wives and girls were kidnapped and turned into slaves. It's been reported that the Muslims are using kidnapped children as suicide bombers. The U.S. and Great Britain are discussing a special initiative to deal with the problem. Well, I will go on record as saying that the U.S. and Britain will do nothing other than smoke and mirrors maneuvers. Barack Hussein Obama is a Muslim jihadist. Wake up, world. Islam placed a Muslim agent in the White House. What did BO tell the UN on September 25th, 2012? Quote, "The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam," end of quote. I'm Rick Wiles. You're listening to True News. We'll take a break. Gerald Celente will be here when I return.
You're listening to True News, the End Time Newscast. Rick will return after this announcement.
This is Max McLean, who is described as the exact representation of God's being. Listen to the Bible from Hebrews 1. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory, and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. So he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs. From Hebrews 1. Listen to the Bible. It's great for the soul.
To hear more, go to radiobible.org.
Well, welcome back to True News. I'm Rick Wiles. The establishment news media makes me laugh. Minutes ago, I saw a headline posted on the website, theweek.com. It said, "Who deserves credit for the economic recovery?" The article states that Democrats and Republicans are still arguing over who caused the Great Recession. So it is no surprise that the parties are now arguing over who is responsible for America's economic resurgence. Then I went to Bloomberg News, and the headline says, "Mayhem erupts on trading floors after Swiss central bank removes cap on franc." Bloomberg said at 9:30 a.m. today, trading floors across the city of London erupted. Outburst of obscenities and confusion followed the Swiss central bank's surprise decision to abolish its 3-year-old policy of capping the Swiss franc against the euro, according to traders in London's financial district. So which is it? Are we enjoying the glorious economic recovery, or are we descending into economic mayhem? Let's ask the man who stays on top of global trends. Gerald Celente reports the news before it happens. He is the publisher of the Trends Journal. You can subscribe at trendsresearch.com. Gerald, today isn't a good day to release a puff piece about Obama's amazing economic recovery. What do you think?
Well, any time is a good time when you're running a con game. So, of course, it's not a good time, and it hasn't been a good time since the new year began. I've been around a long time, and this is volatility that's unprecedented. It's out of control. You look at the markets. They open up in Asia, and they're up on the good news that oil's up. And then oil prices start their collapse again. And then you see gold prices go up, then they go down, now they're back up. You just mentioned what happened with the peg of the Swiss franc to the euro. And by the way, I was holding Swiss francs when they changed that game 3 years ago, and I got burnt on that deal because I was buying Swiss francs because I could see what was going on with the dollar. There has been no recovery. And the reason why they're saying it in Washington is because they're the only ones that have recovered. You look at all the millionaires in Congress. You look how much their wages have gone up and the lifestyles that they live. This is who the recovery has benefited. It's not even the 1%, by the way. It's the 0.01%. Here's the number that should have everybody's head spinning and saying that Celente is making this number up because it can't be true. 85 people in the world, Rick, have more money than half the world's population of 3.5 billion. This recovery has only helped the already filthy rich get richer. Here's how it works. You have the banks, the too big to fails. What they do is they borrow money from the Federal Reserve at 0.25%, and then they loan it out at anything that they can get, even those payday loans where they're up to 700-800%. Then you look at the other scam. Well, the big guys could borrow cheaply, so they're buying back their stock. That's why the market has gone up. And, of course, mergers and acquisitions. Once again, the big guys get the dough for almost zero, and then they put these big deals together. So you saw merger and acquisition activity in 2014. That was back to 2007 levels. Oh, and one other little point. Once upon a time, when I was a young man, people used to have things called savings accounts. They put money in the bank, and they got an interest returned on it that was greater than the inflation rate. Matter of fact, it was so great that people actually, I know people aren't going to believe this, but people actually used to retire on the savings that they put away. Now you put money in the bank, and with the Federal Reserve having not raised interest rates since 2006, you get nothing back. So all this is doing, it's fueling the equity markets. And now that Ponzi scheme is ending. And that's why we're seeing this global destabilization. The markets run up, they run down. This is volatility, and there's nothing to hold it up. Because you saw the great retail numbers that came out in December. They expected them to go way up, and they went way down.
And Gerald, you were calling that long before the Christmas season was underway. You were saying the numbers are going to be dismal.
That's right. We wrote about it. We spoke about it. Here's the easy fact. Again, all you have to do is look at the information rather than taking a political stand on it, as most people do, and or also financial Ponzi scheme, and they keep trying to promote it on these business shows. You look at real income. Real income is below, median household income is below 1999 levels. You saw the numbers come out. Oh, look at all the jobs that were created. Oh, yeah, they got more jobs created and people actually took a decrease in wages. Look at the workforce participation rate. It's at record lows. Look how many people are on food stamps, near record highs. So where's the money coming from? Oh, they're going to have the money not going into the gas tank's going to go into the cash register at the retail store. No, it's not. Because people are in debt, student debt, car debt, mortgage debt, increase in health care thanks to Obamacare. Everything's costing more. So what are they going to end up with? Another $700 or $1,000 in their pocket over the year? Yeah, that'll give the economy a little boost, but nothing of any consequence. And by the way, it's global. Now, you may take me off the air when I say this because it could be blasphemy. And, you know, the FCC hears this, they may shut me out. There's a depression in Europe, but they keep calling it a recession. It's a depression. Oh, and they call it deflation. It's not deflation, it's depression, but everybody's afraid to call a spade a spade.
Oh, Gerald, they actually have another word that they invented called disinflation.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Disinflation. And here's the big lie, Rick. This is the propaganda. You could pick up any paper. You could turn on any business news show, and here's what they say. But you have to be with a Harvard, Princeton, or Yale accent. And they got to be proper when you say this. Well, the reason why deflation is so dangerous is because people, knowing that prices are going to go down, will hold off their purchases. And we can't let that happen because then we can't sell them junk that they don't need. So here's the deal. People aren't waiting for prices to go down to buy things. They have no money. It's as simple as that. But they're putting this big lie of deflation out. It's depression. Too much supply and not enough demand. As I mentioned, it's not 1%, it's 0.01% that's holding on to the cash. They're the ones that have the wealth. There's no middle class. The middle class is gone. Middle management's gone. The middle is, hey, we've become a dollar store society. Who would have ever believed as a young man growing up that this would become America, the land of the dollar store?
Gerald, today's volatility in Switzerland is the direct result of quantitative easing. The Swiss National Bank decoupled the franc today from the euro because the bank expects the European Central Bank to approve a massive quantitative easing program next week. So what happened today is it's been anticipated by all of us who have been warning for years that the central banks are wrecking the markets and the global financial system. This is just the beginning of the volatility.
Exactly. We're looking at the collapse to come in this year. I mean, they may come up with another scheme, but we don't know what it is because their cards are played. They've played wild cards. Maybe they're going to come up with a joker. I'll tell you what the joker looks like. You better look out your window. There may be some ISIS out there. I know it's Florida. No, not that kind of ISIS. The ISIS that are coming everywhere. There was a guy up in Ohio that was going to have a gun and go to D.C. That's the big news. One guy, we're a country of 320 million people. You saw what happened over there in France. Now the place is in lockdown. Troops all over the street. This is a setup. It's a setup. You see what's going on in Europe? There's a depression in Greece. There's a depression in Spain. There's a depression in Italy. There's depression throughout Europe, with the exception of a few countries. You get this clown. I could say now that the French are as dumb as the Americans. They believe this guy Hollande with a popularity rating of 15%, just like the Americans believe George Bush, another imbecile in chief that told us about weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda, and took us to the war on terror that's been a war against we the people that's robbed us of our rights. What they're doing over there, Rick, is they're setting up for the big fall. The people are angry. You're looking at parties rising throughout Europe that have come from nowhere in a year. The Podemos party in Spain. You see UKIP in the UK. You see the parties burgeoning, going in Germany, in Belgium. You're going to start seeing more of them happening in Greece. They kill the Golden Dawn because they try to make it a racist party and a neo-Nazi party. And so because that was becoming so popular. What this is about, it's not about freedom of speech. It has nothing to do with that. You had a couple of guys that killed a couple of people. That's not the reason to bring out the troops. The reason to bring out the troops is to put down the people, because when people lose everything, they have nothing left to lose, and they're ready to take to the streets. That's what's going on.
Gerald, do you remember about 2 years ago, the Swiss Army was conducting drills on responding to an invasion by France? When I read that article, I was like, you got to do a triple take. Like, am I really reading this article right? But the Swiss Army was carrying out various exercises because they were anticipating the collapse of France and that hordes of angry Frenchmen would come over the Alps looking for the Swiss gold.
Nothing is improbable. Look at this 2-bit show that they put on, and they got away with it. You saw that photo of all of the world leaders, with the exception of course, Americans, that were arm in arm in Paris. And you saw what a photo op job that was.
Mm-hmm.
It made it look like there was a crowd behind them, and there wasn't any. It was all cordoned off. It's a show.
So those guys never really marched. They just did a photo op.
That's it. You could go look at it. It was a photo op. That's all it was. There was no crowd behind them. It was all security.
Gerald, I got to tell you this, and I just said this yesterday to some of our staff members. I spend countless hours every day researching global news, analyzing it, condensing it, putting it out on this radio program, and I've come to the conclusion that all I'm doing is gathering propaganda, fake news. Most of it is fake now. What I'm really putting out is a report to decipher the propaganda.
And that's what we do at the Trends Journal. I mean, that's our work.
Would it drive you crazy?
Oh, it does. That's why I surround myself, by the way, with joy and beauty. Our offices are filled with art and plants. There's over 130 plants just in the space that I work in, and art on all the walls. And by the way, to us, that's the antidote to fear is joy and beauty, and all they're doing is selling fear. And so that's a lot that we're writing about. That, just on a side note, that the Italian Revolution, happened in the mid to late 1800s. The Italians were occupied by Austria, Hungary, Germany, a whole bunch of countries, and Giuseppe Verdi, he created his music to instill within the spirit of the Italian people the courage to overthrow the oppressors. Just like they say that music soothes the savage beast. It worked. It was nearly a bloodless revolution. And when you look at the writings of Plato and others, they were concerned that the public, the proles, would get their hands on the music. It was so powerful. It was to be kept away from them.
Well, they're stripping away from civilization everything that is beautiful and pleasing. They're making society coarse and angry and bitter. And they're filling our eyes and our minds with images of death and destruction and anything but beauty.
Exactly. So that's what we're writing about a lot now, on how to change the course of this. And when you think back to the Renaissance, all it did was take a de Medici, the families that had the money to put it into the beauty of the art and the wonderful creations of those days and times.
Do you believe the strategy is deliberate?
No, I just think that they're sick people. I think they're psychopaths and sociopaths. And so it's deliberate work of sociopaths and psychopaths. So, and that's what I'm saying. There's an antidote to it.
We're being sucked into their vortex.
Well, again, not the people that are awake and aware and living the truth within themselves. And as Margaret Mead points out in her works, it only takes a few. And you're doing it, we're doing it, and others are doing it. And by the way, as I was mentioning the new parties, one of the forecasts we're coming up with in 2015 is I've never seen a greater opportunity now for a new third party. I don't know anyone that's excited with Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton or any of the others that are mostly frauds and they'll do anything to get elected. You look here, if there was an election in Russia this past November and 74% of the people stayed home, it'd be headline news. That's what happened here.
You're not excited about your choice between Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush?
So a new third party. And so the opportunities are there. And as I'm saying, we could go over, we know what's going to happen, as it's unfolding. We see it in front of us.
We don't need a third party, Gerald. We need a second party.
Yeah, that better said. We need a second party.
We got the Democratic Republican Party.
Well, I call them the Bloods and the Crips because they're both. No, and I don't mean it sarcastically.
No, okay.
How many more people do they have to murder in the names of?
They're criminal enterprises.
Yeah, and one of our other trends is bankism. How many more businesses and friends do they have to save in the name of too big to fail? This isn't capitalism; it's bankism.
Well, they're knocking each other off. I've lost track of the bankers that have fallen off rooftops.
I know. So what we're saying, Rick, is there's a way out, and this may be the year for it. This could be the escape hatch, because if we don't do something, we can see where they're going to take us. And they're going to take us into more fear, more hysteria, more loss of rights. I'm saying what's going on in Europe. You brought up what happened to the Swiss franc. Don't you think they're going berserk over there, knowing that Draghi is going to do his quantitative easing trick, and they're going to not only probably buy government bonds, but corporate bonds? There's going to be panic in the streets.
Everything that I read today out of Europe said that the Swiss National Bank Board of Governors decided they had to decouple from the euro this week and try to cap their losses at 100 billion francs. Because if they stayed in and the quantitative easing started next week, they're hitched to that train and they're going to ride it all the way to the end.
And that's what I'm saying. This is big. And they know that it's collapsing. They know it is collapsing.
Okay, yesterday Russia announced they are now selling off their foreign currency reserves. And, that means U.S. dollars.
And not only that, Russia also announced that they're going to be cutting off the oil going into Europe and gas that's flowing through Ukraine, because they say Ukraine is siphoning it off. So there's going to be, by the way, this whole Ukraine crisis has been engineered by the West. And anybody could do the research, go on to Google, YouTube, and put in Victoria Nuland, N-U-L-A-N-D, Assistant Secretary of State, United States. Oh, by the way, the wife of Robert Kagan, the neocon. And they could see her on December 13th, 2013, in the National Press Club. And over one shoulder is Chevron, over the other shoulder is Exxon. And her talking about how the path for Ukraine is to follow the one set forth by the International Monetary Fund. Oh, by the way, they just announced yesterday that we the people are going to help the Ukrainians to the tune of $2 billion to pay their debts that they can't pay, even though they follow the advice of Ms. Nuland and others. And you know who was appointed to the Burisma Energy, the largest energy company in Ukraine? Oh, that was Hunter Biden. Hunter, I like to do coke Biden. Yeah, he was appointed as the board of directors. And along with, oh, by the way, the business partner of Secretary of State John Kerry's stepson, Christopher Hines, of the 57 Varieties kind, his partner, Devon Archer, he, too, was appointed to the board of directors to the largest energy company in Ukraine, Burisma Energy. And in all fairness, Rick, the reason that they were appointed, because they are the two brightest guys in the world, and they deserve those positions.
And two members of the new cabinet, they had to get them passports, Gerald.
I know.
Because they weren't even citizens, and the one guy doesn't even speak Ukrainian.
Yep.
I mean...
Yep, and the other one came from, what, the State Department or something?
Right.
A woman, yeah.
And their prime minister, what's his name? Yakakov, I don't know if I forget his name.
Yatsenyuk.
Yeah, he works. He's connected with George Soros.
Yep.
And he's a high level member of the Church of Scientology.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's who's running Ukraine, thanks to Victoria Nuland and John McCain. Hey, had we elected
John... when you look at Yatsenyuk, I guess they're right with that Scientology. This guy did come from outer space, man.
That's right. There you go. Imagine if we had elected John McCain, how different the world would be.
Well,
we would have taken over Ukraine. Let's see. We go down the list. Everything Obama has done, McCain would have done.
Yep. That's the same thing. This is. How about fixing Detroit? Again, by the way, on May 2nd, 2015, we're launching Occupy Peace from here in colonial Kingston. We're at the most historic Four Corners, the most historic intersection in the United States, the only place on each corner where there's a pre-Revolutionary War stone building. And the mayor has given us permission to close down the streets. And Occupy Peace is to honor thy founding fathers, beginning with Washington, a real commander-in-chief, a man that fought in war, led the troops, not one of these guys that plays golf, pool, basketball, and drives pickup trucks. And he said in his farewell address, no foreign entanglements. And the world was at war back then. And Madison and Adams and Franklin and Jefferson, all the founding fathers were wise men who knew that the first business to take care of was the business at home. So we're launching Occupy Peace, and this isn't going to be just a rally. It's going to have takeaways so that we could bring peace back and prosperity, because they go together, as Eisenhower aptly said, warning us that the military-industrial complex is taking over the nation and robbing us of the genius of scientists.
So what's the purpose? What's the purpose of Occupy Peace?
Bring home the troops, seal the borders, no foreign entanglements.
Bring home the troops. Seal the borders.
Bring home the troops, seal the borders, protect America, and use that money that we're spending overseas and giving to other countries, and reinvest it in this country, rebuild the infrastructure, put together a program putting our troops to work in America, rebuild America, restore this country to its greatness. That's what our mission is with Occupy Peace.
And what's the date of the event?
May 2nd, 2015. And again, it's to have peace in your heart, to bring peace on earth. And
you're gonna hold it there in your hometown in upstate New York?
Yes, on the Four Corners of John and Crown Street. I'm looking across the street right now as I'm speaking to you. There's the Kingston Courthouse. Kingston was the first capital of New York State. John Jay was a juror in this courthouse. The Constitution of New York State that was written here in that location, 90% of that Constitution is the Constitution of the United States. 3 Supreme Court justices came from here. The roots of democracy was sown here, and we want to restore them rather than the ones that have been taken away from us. They've robbed us of virtually all our rights. Oh, now Obama has that new cybersecurity one that's coming out as well. Who has the right to listen, to watch, and to look into our lives and everything we're doing? Here's what I'd like to see, Rick. I want to see a drug test for all the Congress and all of the presidents and the president's staffs.
No, that's a great idea.
Because they got to be whacked out on something.
David Cameron said the other day that, he wants all encryption banned. He said there should be no communication that we can't read.
And who are we? Goes back to, you asked me about it, the sociopaths and psychopaths.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you and I heard about when we were kids during the Cold War, that the Soviet Union, those communists, they read everybody's mail, they listen to the phone calls, they spy on you. And we all said, we don't want to ever be a communist. Well, guess what, Gerald? We are communists. We're something. I don't know what we are.
Well, I do.
But these guys are spying on us.
No, it's not communism.
It's fascism.
It's fascism, the merger of state and corporate powers.
That's right.
By definition.
What we have happening...
And by fact.
We have these big corporations who are making an alliance with big government, with the socialists in the government, and they're fascists in the corporations, and the corporations are saying, we'll let you politicians implement your socialism as long as you let us implement our fascism. We get to control the profits. You get to take all the money from the people and spend it and control their lives. And the two of us will have this little private relationship, and we'll rule the world.
This is not a conspiracy theory. As you said, it happens to be a fact. And the fact is, when you look at what they're trying to push through under the guise of their partnerships, such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the one over in Europe as well, the transatlantic one they're doing over there, investment partnership. These aren't trade agreements. They're to give the multinationals the rights over us. That this land that they call free, where we have freedom of speech, they will not allow we the people to look at these agreements. They won't even allow Congress to look at them. They're being designed by the multinational corporations. There's by the way, over in Europe, they're fighting this. Here it doesn't even make the news. So it is a new world order, and it's right in front of us.
Gerald,
it's under the guise of a global trade pact.
Gerald, do you know anything about these global food rules and regulations that are coming into play? I was in Panama last week, and I had breakfast with a retired food processing plant owner, and he told me that, it escapes me the name of the global regime that they're implementing, but he said if these guys get their way, every piece of food will have to be basically a genetic paper trail from seed to harvest to processing, and it will all have to be filed with national governments. You won't be able to sell any food that you don't know where it came from every step of the way, including the composition of the fertilizer put in the ground and, mulch that you put around a plant, whatever. Every single thing will have to be tagged electronically and categorized and registered with the government.
You see, this is all, I'm not specifically sure of that, but it seems as though it falls under the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It gives the multinationals the right to make the laws. They rule over sovereign nations, not only in environment, not only in labor, not only in what you're talking about, but even to the levels of freedom of speech. It's been revealed through WikiLeaks that this is what's going on. And so it's a takeover. This is not a conspiracy theory. And it's in front of us, but they won't allow us to look at it. The flack that we have under the name of the United States Trade Representative, his name is Michael Froman. And this guy, this thing was conceived under the Bush administration, when and then Froman was also the national security advisor under Obama. So now he's the trade representative. So this is a scheme that's in place that has nothing to do with trade. It has to do with more of our loss of rights, and this is more of the globalization. Again, it's the New World Order. It's not a conspiracy theory. The facts are there for anyone to look at that wants to find them. It's
a corporate global governance.
That's it. Multinational takeover.
Have you considered the possibility of what would happen if the major private security firms merge? I mean, we're talking, you could have one corporation that has more men in uniform and with arms than all the armies of the world.
Well, look, they've militarized the police. They're militarizing everything. It's terrible what's happened to this country.
Gerald, before I let you go, regarding the plunge in oil, is this a natural market action, or is the West deliberately bankrupting Russia?
No, we've been on this since the beginning, Rick. We do oil. We do Trends in the News each weekday, and we cover oil, gold, and the markets every day. And we remember, I remember when it hit $115 a barrel in June, and then it started going down. And the first thing was, what's going on here? This is the height of the driving season. Why is this happening? And then the Ukrainian crisis was one of the issues, by the way, that brought the price up, along with destabilization in the Middle East. And then I thought, this is a shot against Russia. That was my first thought. And then as I started looking into it deeper, it's no, it's much bigger than that. It's a supply and demand issue. Again, look what happened to retail sales in December. Look what's going on. Look at copper prices. They're at 5.5-year lows. Look, you could buy a ton of reinforcement rod, rebar, in China cheaper than you could buy a ton of cabbage. There's too much product. There's a world slowdown. There's a global slowdown. Particularly, it's a very simple formula. If the United States and Europe don't buy stuff, China and its satellite cheap labor companies, slave labor countries don't make the stuff. If they're not making things, then the resource-rich nations aren't exporting. So, for example, 40% of the new copper mined each year goes to China. Who does that hurt now, with copper prices so low? Chile. You want to start seeing a revolution start happening? Take a look what's going on over in Brazil. Petrobras, the big energy company. Besides the corruption, now declining prices. What's going to happen? You already have a destabilization. They're going to go into a depression. Take a look at Venezuela. Venezuela needs oil at $115 a barrel, $117 just to break even. You look what's going on in the United States. 20% of the junk bonds, 18 to 20%, energy related. Look at the amount of loans the big banks have given to the energy industry. So you're going to start seeing this thing exploding in a lot of ways.
T. Boone Pickens said last week that 50% of the oil rigs in the U.S. are going to be idled.
Yes and no, because what's happening is that a lot of the smaller ones, yes, but production, when you're not making money, you're going to sell the stuff for anything you could get, particularly when you have bills to pay. So we're not going to see we're going to start seeing the little guys get whacked out, but the bigger producers keep going. So
and they will buy out the assets of all the little guys that went under.
Exactly, for pennies on the dollar, and a merger of the biggers again. So to answer your question, no, I see this as a supply and demand issue, and it goes back to what we were talking about before. This is not deflation; it's depression, and no one wants to call a spade a spade.
Then we are witnessing a rapid acceleration of the planet into a global depression.
Global depression followed by?
War.
Exactly, global repression. And that's what they're doing in Europe. That's why they keep promoting all this. We got a lone wolf. I heard Eric Holder, the Attorney General. We're gonna have a war. I'm not making this up. We're gonna have a war against the lone wolf. How are you gonna have a war against somebody you don't know? And what do you got? We got 1, 2, 3, 5, 20, 30, 100 crazy people. That's enough to stop life. And again, how many? No one's talking about how many people did the Americans kill in Iraq? The number I saw is around 1 million. How many in Afghanistan? How many in Libya? Hey, Obama's bombing Syria. Bombs away Obama. Hey, the Nobel Peace Prize. Perfect cat, man. Hey, how many did he kill in? 5 suspected militants were just killed. Suspected militants. I'm really good at killing people, Obama. Does anybody ever think why they hate us? And they talk about, these people going into these countries and fighting with the terrorists. Now, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You have people going into Muslim countries that the United States, France, England, Germany, Italy have sent troops into. And then when people go in there to fight against the occupiers, they're the bad guys. Oh, it makes perfect sense to me now. Because after all, if they came over here from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from Libya, and they were trying to take over my country, and I try to fight against them, well, I'm a militant.
Gerald, I read the English translations of many of Vladimir Putin's speeches, and they're quite disturbing because he is rationally, intelligently presenting his case that the West is encircling his country, and at some point they will have to take actions to defend their national security. Is the West are these psychopaths? Honestly, I mean, I see what they're doing, and yet it's so bizarre, so crazy. You think, can anybody be that insane that you're going to start a nuclear war with Russia?
Look at World War I. It was started by insane people. Look at the Iraq War. There were no weapons of mass destruction ties to Al Qaeda. And what you're mentioning about Putin is precisely correct. Because here's the deal. You know, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, the former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan, is also a contributor to the Trends Journal, and his website is paulcraigroberts.org. There's no one I respect more for economic and geopolitical insights than Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, and he was pointing out as well about and informing me. And writes about it. Here was the deal. And remember, this is a guy that was in the Reagan administration. He could and did, as Assistant Treasury Secretary, call in the director of the CIA and question him under oath. This is the level we're talking at. The deal was this, that the Soviet Union, when it broke up, was going to give back Eastern Germany to Germany. And in exchange, the agreement was that NATO was not going to expand any further. And then Slick Willie Clinton broke that promise. Then George Bush broke that promise. And now Obama's breaking it again. So here's the deal. Napoleon couldn't do it. Someone gave me a chart, a famous graph, as a gift. And it shows Napoleon's troops leaving at the Polish border. He started out with 422,000. And it shows the pattern with the weather changes and how the troop decline goes to Moscow, and it shows it on the way back. By the time he got back to the Polish border, he had 10,000 troops. You look at what happened with Hitler. He launched the greatest military offensive that history has ever known, and he was defeated by the Russians. 22 million of them were killed. Anyone that thinks that they're going to beat the Russians is out of their mind. And anyone that would want to start a fight with them is crazy. They're not going to go down. They have not invaded Ukraine. The West has.
And what really disturbs me is when I read that Russian leaders are referring to us as the Nazis. Because
look who they put in. Look who the Ukrainians.
We put the Nazis. We put Nazis and fascists in power in Ukraine, and as you say, you know, the Russians have they've got memories of what the Nazis did to them, and they're not going to let it happen again.
No.
And Mr. Putin said in a speech a few weeks ago, you know, our military has the might and the means and the determination to do it again.
Let's get this straight. We couldn't win in Iraq. We can't win in Afghanistan. Who thinks that NATO is going to defeat Russia? I mean, it's not even what they're smoking, man. It's way worse than that.
But it's going to have horrific consequences for the human race.
Oh, it will be as Einstein had predicted. He said, I don't know how the Third World War will be fought, but the fourth will be fought with sticks and stones.
That's right. Gerald, last question before I let you go. What do you guys at Trends Journal, what are you forecasting for 2015?
Well, again, the number of things. Among them is that this economy looks like it's cooked for this year, and we're going to see a lot more volatility. The year has just begun. We're bullish on gold, by the way. We had, as you well may know, we had said that the bottom of gold was when it hit 1,300. We said it had another $100, $150 downward spiral, and we pretty much nailed that. And now you're seeing gold trading pretty solidly over 1,200. So we're bullish on gold, and we're very, very skeptical about the world economy, and we're negative on it actually, and we're very concerned about war. And again, though, I believe in the ability of the human spirit to rise to higher levels. And when you see the gap of how many people distrust government and the opportunity to fill it with something that's of a higher civilized and spiritual level, I think the future is in our hands. And that's why we're launching Occupy Peace. Gerald, any possibility that Gerald Celente would run for president in 2016? Nah, I'm not the kind of guy to run for it. No, it's not. That's not. By the way, one of the ways I made my career is at a graduate school. I used to run political campaigns in Westchester County in New York, which was at that time the richest county in the states. And they sent me up to Albany. I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate at 23 years old. And I was also a chief government affairs specialist for the chemical industry in D.C. from 73 to 79. So I've been around. I know what it looks like. And that's not for me. So I'm more of a guy that I know how to do it, and I know how to run these things. And as a matter of fact, I also taught American politics and campaign technology at St. John's University, the course I designed and instructed. So I know how to do it, but I'm not the guy to do it. You need somebody that's not a Napolitano born in the Bronx.
I know, but in the debates, you would be calling them freaks.
Oh yeah, no.
The debates they'd be great. I'd pay any price to get a seat in the debate. All right, Gerald Celente.
Well, here's what I say, though. By the way, I say that my blood is Napolitano, and I was born in the Bronx. What do you expect? And as I also say, my blood is Italian, but my heart's American. I love this country. I could never be me if I was born anywhere else. And that's why I want to do everything to, as I said, honor thy founding fathers and to be so grateful for all this country has given to me. And I don't want these freaks to rob it.
Well, give some thought to running. Seriously.
Okay.
Seriously. Gerald Celente, TrendsResearch.com, publisher of the Trends Journal. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you, Rick. All the best, and thank you for all you're doing.
Well, that's all I have for today's program. I appreciate that you spent this hour with me. I'm always humbled that so many people around the world set an appointment to spend 1 hour with me and True News. It's very humbling, and I appreciate you being here. If you're a brand new listener, we hope you become hooked on True News. There's nothing like it anywhere in the world. Listen, I want to remind everybody that True News is 100% financed by the listeners. We don't have advertisers. We don't sell products. We don't have gimmicks. And George Soros doesn't send us checks. In fact, I just read today that George Soros invested about $33 million this last year financing his socialist revolution movements, including all of the protesters in Ferguson, Missouri. How about that? The money came from George Soros. Folks, we're up against some big, fat daddy warbucks. We need you to step in and help finance True News. Go to TrueNews.com and give the very best gift that you can give. God bless you. See you tomorrow.